Hopefully this one will be really short. There's no reason for it to be long. Borderline personality disorder and court-appointed parents. When you go into school, your teacher has the legal term in locus parenti. It means that whilst your child is in the care of the teacher is responsible for the care and the safety of your child and everything that entails. That is the meaning of the very legal term in locus parentis. I believe it's Latin. I don't speak Latin. I don't care. I do actually have an O-level in the basic principles of English law, and I worked in early years education for a very long time. I am NNEB qualified. I used to be in locus parenti. At the age of 11, there was an incident, and I was removed from my family home and put, first of all, I was placed with emergency foster parents who were really nice people, and after a few weeks there, I was put into a very large children's home. In its heyday, it had 500 children. At the time I moved in, it had 300. And a couple of years after that, when it was closed very violently overnight, after our court-appointed parents, the children's home staff who were members of the Union NALGO, the National Association of Local Government Officers, because of a planned walkout on 12 noon on a particular day, our court-appointed parents turned their backs, walked out and abandoned us. The council who owned the children's home saw an opportunity to very quickly close a very large, very expensive children's home that they had been in the process of trying to close for I don't know how many years before I had arrived in that children's home. And I said I went to foster parents first and then to this children's home. On the day I was removed from my family, my mum was under arrest for attempted murder. The police were on their way to where my dad worked to arrest him. I don't know what they were charging him with, but in the circumstances, they really needed to ask him some very important questions. Whilst my 8-year-old sister was in an ambulance going to hospital because she was in a coma after my mum had poured a bottle of vodka down her throat when she was 8 years old. I can't remember, I've no idea how long my sister was in a coma. When she did come out of hospital, she did join me in the children's home, and she was there with me in that children's home when the staff walked out because of a strike called by the Union NALGO. In that children's home that day, my sister was still to some extent, my sister. At least we were still together. And as I said, the council who owned it just saw an opportunity to close a very large, very expensive home for children who do not have parents. They saw an opportunity to close it, and they sent in a very large number of very friendly police officers dressed in riot gear, crash helmets, those big plastic shield things, big sticks to encourage people to behave nicely. And the start of the eviction, the police's first action as they started to evict us. There were all these vans that I did not know what they were until the police opened the doors, and out come, on leashes, a lot of dogs. But a lot of dogs barking. All I saw were the teeth going up and down with the sharp teeth, dribble flying everywhere. I saw that, and I am out the back door across the yard, climbing over a fence and running off into the wilds of Sidcup in terror. That is the last time my sister and I saw each other. In my time in care, obviously after we were separated, I am unable to even take a guess at my sister's experience. Because I grew up in care, I have had a lot of mums and a lot of dads. When you live in a children's home, the 6 to 8 mums and dads who wake you up in the morning and send you to school, when you come home from school, you have a different set of mums and dads. There's just the staff changing shifts. But don't forget, these are our court-appointed parents. I may call my key worker Richard, however much he may have had plans to groom and abuse me, but I still looked to him and saw him as a parent. And there was something really important I wanted to add to this, but right now I can't remember what it is, and it doesn't matter. I was taken into care at the age of 11. I was thrown out of my children's home a few months before my 18th birthday. Here's your flat, here's the keys, don't come back. Up until those few months in care, my behaviour, other than one single 2-minute incident at the age of 12, had always been impeccable. My second children's home, the children's home I left to become an adult in my flat, that I was dumped in there as an emergency measure, along with some other children my age, refugees from the night that children's home was closed down very, very violently by the police on the instructions of the council that owned my children's home. Oh, I hate having concussion. My brain just doesn't work. And if I wrote this down, all this stuff down, at least reading from a script would make things easier. And the reason why I don't write it down, the reason why because this isn't about trying to construct and build some kind of series. I am, at this point in time, I will not speak to any mental health professional. If they cannot be bothered to listen, if they cannot be bothered to see me, at the very least, when they look at me, I would like them to see, at the very least, a human being. And all they ever see is a mental patient. And I do not like that. That's why I will not speak to any mental health professionals until they are prepared to demonstrate to me that they can look and listen to me as a person as opposed to a mental health patient. And it's fair to say that for people like me, with mental health problems in general, I have a borderline personality disorder. That is my main diagnosis eventually. But there are other diagnoses tied to my name in my patient records. I don't know if it means I have all of them as well. I don't know if all of these different labels that have been thrown at me through the years are well, I've got all of them, or I've only got some, or maybe that psychiatrist I spoke to that day had an argument with his wife before he came to work, and so he decided this is what's wrong with me. But whether psychiatrists or even, except for one weekend in the year 2013, I have always gone into mental health hospitals voluntarily as opposed to being sectioned. And when I went into hospital in 2013, where I was only in hospital for a weekend, I was under the impression I went in voluntarily. I have only learnt recently that that weekend I had been sectioned under the Mental Health Act, and no one had told me. But that is not... I just wanted to describe that so that people have context. Whilst I am a patient in hospital, whether I have been sectioned or whether I have gone in voluntarily, the therapists and the doctors in the hospitals who treat me, they are in locus parentis. To some extent, in the way my understanding of the world works, especially the world of people and human beings, they to me were parents. And this is important, that's why I need to mention it. Today is Wednesday, I think. Tuesday, but 2 weeks ago Tuesday, on my way to my new job, I had a fall and banged my head very badly. And now I do not have a new job because of that. I'm not well enough. I've got to walk around with a walking stick. So being a waiter or a barman, or with my new job, a pizza chef, it's difficult to do any of those jobs whilst you have to walk around with a walking stick so that you do not fall over and bang your head again. Now, following that accident and following Tuesday, I have gone to A&E, Accident and Emergency, at my local medical hospital. Now, because I live in Walworth in London, where King's College Hospital is, which is a medical hospital, across the road is Maudsley Hospital, which is a mental health hospital. All of a sudden, I cannot say the word psychiatric. Oh, there we go. It's easy. But on one side of the road is the A&E, because this is a medical hospital, and across the road you have a mental health hospital. And all hospitals have security. In A&E, in a medical hospital, when I was in A&E, because they want me to have a CT scan, I might have a bleed on my brain. It is over 2 weeks since I fell over. My ears are still ringing. I still cannot walk properly. I still have breathing difficulties and serious neck pains following the accident. That's why they would like me to have a CT scan and recommend very strongly that I have a CT scan. But security staff in A&E, in a medical hospital, are routinely equipped with handcuffs as part of their uniform. I'm sorry, they are not police officers. This is a hospital. Though I understand over the road in the mental health hospital, I understand the security staff there may feel the need to have handcuffs equipped as part of their uniform, But I say again, they are not police officers. Now, if we put the mental health hospital aside for one moment and just go back to A&E in a medical hospital, and do not forget, the reason I am in A&E is that they would like me to have a CT scan. Hospital security, they have no right to be wearing handcuffs. They are not trained to restrain me. They are not trained to put handcuffs on me. This is A&E. I am there because I fell over and bumped my head, not because I had been arrested or had done anything wrong. I had an accident, fell over and banged my head. So why is the hospital, very friendly hospital security person who has to stand beside me or at least keep an eye on me so that I don't walk out of A&E, why is he equipped with handcuffs? He is not legally obliged to even touch me. He is not. He has no right, whatever I may do in an A&E, he has no right to touch me, to restrain me, or even touch those very, very shiny handcuffs. He is not a police officer, and A&E in a medical hospital, doctors wear stethoscopes. Nurses have those little watch things so that they can take your pulse, and they have thermometers so that they can take your... That in a hospital is the kind of equipment that comes with hospitals. Handcuffs on staff employed by a medical hospital should not be wearing handcuffs. And though I'm only in A&E, because of the reason why I'm there, they are concerned I may have a bleed on my brain. Whilst I am there, even the nurses and the doctors in A&E, in a medical hospital, to some extent, they are in locus parentis, court-appointed parents. They are responsible for my health and my safety whilst I am there. So why are court-appointed parents wearing handcuffs as standard in the accident and emergency department of a medical hospital? I do not want to go near the hospital because of the handcuffs. I fell over and I banged my head. I have never been put in prison. Yes, on one occasion I spent an overnight in a police cell, but that was following I had been jumped on my doorstep and burgled at gunpoint, and I was upset after that. And that's the only time I have ever spent any time whatsoever in police custody. Not because I did anything wrong, but after being burgled at gunpoint, I was unwell. And this past 2 weeks, while I have been very unwell due to the bang on my head, due to having a concussion, I was speaking with my GP earlier this week. I don't right now remember what today was. I think I spoke to her on Monday because my work coach at the job centre would very much like a sick note, because she tells me that once she's received that, she can actually help me. She is my work coach. She is able, she's the person who sets my work commitments. So because she has a sick note, she is allowed to say, Jim, you're not well, so do not apply for any jobs. And I just see that as stopping me trying to find a job and returning to work as soon as possible. I do not like being on universal credit. I'm not going to go into any details. This is not about saying anything bad about universal credit. It is about expressing my anger and my disgust about how we had to exist in a children's home. And I only want to finish with one more important thing about the children's home. The Hollies in Sidcup. Very early in the 1800s, long before I'd even been imagined, a very wealthy person who was concerned about orphans, he bought a large piece of land with houses. These were very nice houses with support buildings, and he gifted that. Councils did not exist back then. He gifted it to Lammerby Parish. I don't understand what a parish is, but because of that word, I automatically think of church. So, to my way of thinking, this very, very wealthy man who cared about orphans bought out of his own money housing to house 500 children who had no mums and dads. That's why the Hollies was created. And he gifted it to his local church to provide housing and mums and dads to children who had no mums and dads. I don't know when councils were existed, but the Hollies Children's Home passed from Lammerby Parish to Bexley Council, and straight away Bexley Council saw this children's home as a burden. And they, I don't know how, but they advertised it. Does anyone want free housing, a free children's home for 500 children? It first of all went to Lewisham Council. Now don't forget, we are still in the 1800s. Before the end of that century, before the year 1900, that children's home, the Hollies, passed into the ownership of Southwark Council. And when I was 11 years old, 1979, that children's home was there for myself and my younger sister to provide a home for children whose parents were either unfit to look after their children, such as my parents, and even some children in that home had no parents. That's why this specific part of the children's home, these are all houses, this particular house, all the children in there, they will be adopted. They have no mums and dads. They are orphans. To cut a long story short, I've mentioned earlier how this children's home was closed very violently overnight by police at the behest of Southwark Council. I don't know what year in the transaction occurred. That whole children's home, housing for 500 children, was sold for £1 to a property developer. That children's home still exists today. It is still called the Hollies, but today it is a gated community. The house I lived in, Cedar, it was called the Hollies because all the houses are named after trees. The house, very beautiful house I lived in with my 20 brothers and sisters. When you are in a children's home, all the kids are your brothers and sisters. My house, Cedar, where I had 20 brothers and sisters, today, if you buy that one house, you are paying £1 million Today, that is a home for one single family. Mum and dad, I stand corrected, two families. Back then, Cedar was just one single house. Today, it is two semi-detached houses. It's still the same one building, but all those doors, when I was a kid, that just made it one house, well, they've all been blocked off by new wall. And so now it's two semi-detached houses. So my home, Cedar, my house, today only houses two families with however many children they have. I have no problem with that. I imagine though that my house, Cedar, no longer has 20 children in that one house. And there are 20 houses just like that. And the whole lot was sold for £1 by Southwark Council, who were my in locus parentis. This 500 place children's home was gifted for free. The only condition, please use it to house children who need parents. Gifted, first opened in the very early 1800s to help orphans. It was there in 1979 when my sister and I needed a safe place. It was closed down very violently by police on the behest of Southwark Council a few years later. And a few years later after that, the entire complex was sold for £1 single pound, 100 pence. And each of those houses within that children's home, if you buy them today as a home, they will cost you £1 million. And that's just the semi-detached part. That's not even the whole house. Cedar, the house I grew up in, if you were to buy that house today as a house, you were going to pay £2 million. Southwark sold that for £1, and somehow no one made any money out of that at all. Somehow this gift given by a rich person, which right from the start was seen as nothing but a burden, was passed on to rich people to make vast amounts of money. Today, it still exists, the Hollies in Sidcup, but today it is a very private, very gated community. It is not an institution housing 500 children who need parents. And I know we've moved from children's home, foster parents are better. I'm not going to go into the details at half hour. This is far longer than I anticipated. But cycles of abuse, patterns of behaviour passed down through circumstances I won't go into. My sister's son, my nephew, I had to take him to live with me a week after he turned 3. And because of my depression and because I knew I was going to kill myself, I was forced to put him in care. Now, he did spend some time in the last of the children's home. I don't know if there are any children's home left. He was in a children's home called Tender Road in Bermondsey. Or it might have been called Rosebery Street Children's Home. I worked in Tender Road Nursery around the corner. But we lost contact because I tried to kill myself and ended up in a hospital. And he ended up with foster parents, and he spent most of his life being pushed from foster parent to foster parent to foster parent, never knowing why he was moved around, always believing it's because he did something wrong, he was not good enough. Fortunately for me today, he has been very successful in his life. He has been to Cambridge, he does have a degree, and the day before COVID started, the day before lockdown, the first lockdown, his first TV programme as a co-presenter on BBC One, right after the One show, that was aired for the first time. I was forced to put him into care, but he was able to make better of his circumstances, so much better. He is a TV personality. He started off on X Factor. BBC Three gave him an opportunity to make a 1 hour, I don't know what you call this type of film. The first part of it was him relating his early history. The second part was speaking to children in foster care now and their experience, ending with what does their future hold for them? That was the kind of programme. And it's only through that I learned what happened the day I went into care. I did not know anything about that until I watched that show. And today, yes, if you go and switch on BBC Two, it's actually off on BBC Two often. I don't know the name of the show. When I was younger, the same type of show would have been presented by John Craven. It's one of those Sunday out in the countryside trying to... I don't know what those shows are even for. This particular show now, it is presented by whoever the most famous woman... I don't even know if she's a priest or... I know she wears the dog collar, but other than that, I don't know her name. I just know that she's in terms of women priests, she's the one who's on TV most. If she's on Songs of Praise a lot, and in this show on BBC Two, she's the main presenter, and she stays at a church. And my nephew, he is that kind of roving reporter that, right, let's go to Ashley, and he'll be the one tied up in stocks, face covered in mud and squash tomatoes, saying, and here at the Elmerton Fete and Summer Fair, he is that kind of presenter on that show on BBC Two, and I imagine they are all repeats today. I don't know. I don't actually